guys. Today's episode is brought to you by our resident superhero. As you will hear later, he will talk about his grueling battle between having sickle cell and using it to fight crime or let's say maybe more nefarious actions, but he will let you know. He has a very unique introspective on how should we put it?
I don't have a clue. I'm listening to
let me just say, if you have watched Supercell, he is the embodiment of what it means to have adversity happen in life and overcome it, but still triumph in different aspects. Some of those aspects could be violent bank robberies, or what was it again? Oh, his working as a breakdown when he stopped 3 terrorists from detonating what seemed to be a dirty bomb. Well, I don't want to gas him up anymore. I will let him do the talking, because once again, our guest needs no further introduction. And will you introduce yourself?
We were both waiting for
That was the best introduction I've ever had anywhere. Better than any bio ever read anywhere in the world.
the whole thing is commandant.
Oh man. Well, let's go. That was good. Oh, you hear me clearly?
Clearly.
Good? Alright, good.
Don't worry, listen, this time there's
Sure.
nothing wrong. I got back up, on the back up, on the back up, on the back up, on the back up.
Good. Got it.
Just for context for you guys, we've already filmed this episode weeks ago. Months ago? Months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a silent movie. There's no audio whatsoever. And that's why Jarrett was crashing out. If you remember the episode where we told you that there was supposed to be a video that there wasn't. So here we are with Dario Richards
Here I
again. You just saw Andre have his spiel that Dario is a superhero. We love that. And we're gonna, I guess, dive deep into how you're a superhero. Introduce yourself, Mr. Superman.
Hi, my name is Dario. Apparently, I'm a superhero.
Don't shrug it off as a joke.
That's what all these superheroes do.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just a normal human being. Hi.
Or you were a normal human being.
Mm.
And then, in fact, no, you were born with your sickle cell that made you a superhero.
I was born with sickle cell that made me a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
Say
that. I was just about to say that. Say that 4 times fast.
Okay.
So, what was it like growing up with sickle cell?
Growing up with sickle cell it was challenging, but I always had like the same way I was born with sickle cell, I was also born with a unique type of optimism. I think as a child, when you have sickle cell, you don't perceive the world through the lens of a disease. Mm-hmm. You perceive the world through the lens of, I am a boy. I want to be like all the other boys on the pasture or the other children. And then just being struck with the reality that there is this disease that exists. Mm-hmm. As a child, I think I used to log sickle cell in my brain as a minor inconvenience that sometimes interrupts my world. So as a child, I would try to spend as much time doing what others do, what normal children do, and then have these bouts of hospitalization. So for actually my entire childhood, I spent if a year has 12 months, at least once a month for 9 months of the year, I will be hospitalized. I actually didn't do any promotion exams in fourth form because when I was in fourth form, I had to get a surgery and it kept me out of school for a while. So it just went to fifth form. Even though I think that was just my teacher's strategy to get me out of the school faster. But yeah, it was this what I logged in my brain as this minor inconvenience that will oftentimes disrupt or interrupt the things that I wanted to do to exist as a normal child. So that's how it was growing up. As my mother would observe, I used to self-sabotage a lot. And what do I mean by self-sabotage is that the best way to manage something like, or to deal with something like sickle cell is to do things to manage it. But I would always put myself in situations to have sickle cell crises because, that's the fun thing to do. So because I just labeled it as this minor inconvenience, as this thing that happens occasionally, I would hardly pay the attention to it that I should to make sure that I limited how it impacted my life. In my mind, do life, and this happens, I pause, then get back up and do life again. And that's how it was as a child. My mother was incredible. I think who I am today is actually the product of how my mother raised me. I grew up in the Pine in the 90s. So obviously the environment wasn't the best at that time. And my mother would do all that she could to keep me from going outside. So she was very protective, stay inside, but she would never frame it as a punishment. So I think it was the first person in my community to have a computer, like back then I had compact computers with a big back. I had one of those, and PlayStation and Nintendos. And I think it was part of her strategy to protect me from the elements, not just from, the crime, the drugs, etc. that would be in the community, but also to protect me from myself, because my track record has shown that I would do things that I know could potentially lead to crises. So I actually am very appreciative of my mother, because she had the wisdom to raise me in a way where I was guarded, like almost held close, but when time came for her to provide opportunity for me to thrive, she would open the doors. So I would always remember, I want to play football or I want to play cricket, and the first response from her would be, no, you can't do this because this is going to lead. And then I'll come back again, but mommy really want to play. She would say, all right, you can play, but this is how we're going to do it. She would buy the gear and she would show up to every game. And she isn't showing up just to support me, which is, I appreciate it. But she also showing up to be like my personal ambulance just in case something happens, to take me to the hospital. So it was this incredible balance of, I can do all that I can to keep you safe, but I'm not going to smother you. And I think that contributed significantly to who I am today. So yeah, big ups to Debs. Yeah.
So let me gather the question properly. So it's hard to be sick and confined, and sometimes you kind of want to fight back against it, as you were kind of leading to just now. How do you not grow up with resentments of not being able to do what everybody else can do?
Yeah, I think a part of it was just that childish optimism that I had, almost a bit delusional. So I developed this complication in my hip called a vascular necrosis when I was 14. And what it meant is that the femur of my hip was dying. So the first question I asked the doctor when they diagnosed it was like, so when I could play football again? The doctor was like, well, you will never walk properly again, far less run. Like sickle cell is out of the question, right? And when I look back at it, like that should have been the most devastating news that I could receive up to that point. And he required that I don't put weight on the hip because it was only 14. And I had to wait until I was 17 to get the surgery to correct it, because if I got it too early, it might stunt my growth. So I had to walk on crutches for 2 years. Right? So I went to school for 2 years just walking on crutches. And I remember leaving the hospital and asking my mother to drop me to sports and games so I could get these, them bike gloves, like your fingers. Because it was like, if I go wear these crutches, again, my mind was these crutches had not become my invisible bike. And I was going to run the halls of foundation like it was riding a motorcycle. And I did get some lashes at school for it, like there were teachers who, a teacher literally, well, the deputy principal caught me singing the national anthem at the top of my lungs, hobbling through the hallway. And when I stopped in front of another teacher's class, the teacher said, nothing wrong with here, Here running crutches for style. And in my mind, that was exactly what I wanted to create. Like, I wanted people to think that nothing was wrong with me. And that was part of just is optimism, is this sense of, and I don't know where it came from initially. This type of delusion of everything is going to be okay, make the most of every situation. So even though there have been, even to know as an adult, there have been pockets of dark spirals. But I feel like all my life I have only ever like gotten to the edge of the cliff. But I never jumped over it. Like I never went off. And that has been a combination of just my mindset from very young, but also very strong community. So yes, there were difficult periods. There were miserable periods. But I have always been very, very optimistic, very, very kind of, all right, yeah, I hear you say this, but this is what I'm going to do. So stuff like traveling, like all my life I knew if I spend a lot of time in high altitudes, it could impact sickle cell. I travel all the time. Well, until now, the doctor just banned me from traveling for a little bit, but yeah, it has just been the mindset that I grew up with. Yeah.
Cool. So how has that helped you, molded you to want to give back to young people who may be going through the same thing, going through hardships, going through violent crime, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. So I do work. I have a nonprofit called Inspire Life Solutions that I co-founded. We focus primarily on gun and gang related crime, and I think where that started is that I used to volunteer and do prison ministry like back in the day with a Christian organization. And it will always shock me whenever, I don't know if any of you guys ever went to the prison in Barbados. But the prison, like you feel like a prisoner. Like the door don't open to the door behind you closed. And whenever I get on the yard in the prison, like people would know my name. Like I would hear my name shout, "Hey Dario," And it's not that I was, as I said, my mother used to stop me from going outside. But I have so many friends either from the community that I grew up in, friends from school who knew me and are in prison. So having gone through that for a couple of years, I give thoughts more and more to how do I serve them best? How do I do something more tangible in helping to provide solutions, helping to contribute to seeing their lives change by using the gifts and the skills and the experiences that I have offering to them in the prison setting. So that's where it started. And because we were delivering this program to the prison, and the program was really good, like we introduced a sport for development intervention to the prison. So on one day, the guys will do sport, and while they're doing the sport, we will be teaching principles, life principles, principles for growth and transformation. And then another day we will spend time in the classroom unpacking what we would have learned. And the program was so effective that the prison actually endorsed it. They wrote us a letter of endorsement just talking about the impact of the program and asking us to scale it to the entire prison, which back then was a difficult, we prison small, but still for our organization, it was a big ask. but it showed the value of the impact that we were having. And then out of that, we were engaged by the government then to help to provide some interventions, not just in the prison, but into the communities when we saw the spike in the murder rate and gang violence emerging. So that has always been a combination of just how do I serve these guys that I grew up around who did not have the same options that I have. Because even, and this is why people ask me all the time, oh, Dario, how you grew up here, and you ain't turn out this way. I was a pastor for a couple of years. My life is built around faith based or very focused on productivity and growth and purpose. And people would ask, why you like this and this body, and I would always stop them because I would tell them all the time that even though me and a guy grew up on the same block, we had two different opportunities. And I realized life is really about what are the opportunities or the options that you're given, right? People love to talk about the power of a choice, but choices only have power when you have the availability of options. If I only give you one option and then tell you, oh, you could choose, well, that's not a choice, right? The power of a choice is in how many options you have available to you that you can make a decision to choose the right one. And there's so many people who grew up and they either don't have the options that I had, or they might have the options but they're blinded to them. They don't realize that this option exists. And I see it all the time. I know friends, the first time they had an ID card is when they were adults, And we would say, oh man, but you could go to school and you could go. And they said, nah, that ain't for me, not for everybody else. So it's an option for them, but they're blinded to it. And that became just a huge passion of mine. How do I help to provide better and alternative options to persons who have found themselves in these types of environments, and not just present the options, but help to remove the scale from their eyes to see that these options are actually real, and you could take this option, you could take this path. And that is what that's where it started. And then obviously my faith played into it, just my sense of calling to be missional, as a Christian, as a believer, to not just put my faith on display. And part of that, obviously, there's a component of sharing the gospel and converting, but then there's also the component of just serving the world, of being salt and light, bringing light so people can see better, adding salt, so we can help to preserve and bring people out of decay and darkness. So that combination of my personal history and my faith is what led me down that path initially. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to rewind just a little bit, and I want to bring up some controversialness. So with the prison system, it could be said that our prison system is not meant for rehabilitation, just for punishment.
Yeah.
Do you think that your program that you had run before was helping with rehabilitation? How do you think we should go forward to help with rehabilitation? Because I feel, in my opinion, guys, don't murder me in the comments. My opinion is that in seeing, because I've worked with people who have gone through rehab and they come from prison and they just cycle through this institutionalized thought process of, I can't do anything better than crime. They come in and you get them sober for a while, get them off of drugs, and then they go right back at it if they don't apply the program. So in application of that program, it's supposed to be rehabilitation so that you can learn things, learn skills, learn how to write your name, because some people don't know how to write their name, learn how to take care of yourself, learn how to get money, keep money, save money, all of the things. But without all of those resources in the actual prison, or there even being many programs dedicated for prisoners to come out, and also the fact that society just sees them as criminals and doesn't see them as I served my time, doesn't see it as I'm rehabilitated. They kind of just keep going through a loop of I've done my time, but now I have to come out and no one's going to give me a chance.
Yeah.
So now I have to just go back to crime because that's all I could do.
Yeah.
Do you think your program helped? Do you think there should be more? What could be done about things like that?
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. But even before we get to the prison, I think what you mentioned last is a huge part of the problem. Is the society. So by nature, we are a very punitive society, right? We are a very unforgiving society by nature, right? And I hear it all the time, you know, why prisoners, why you want me, and you know, the work with gangsters again is a very punitive mindset, and that is then has been reflected in the prison. However, I think during our time working in the prison, I've seen persons of influence within the prison system being very passionate and committed about effective rehabilitation. One of the reasons why we were told that our program stood up back then, we're starting the process of doing it again, is the prison officers told us that this was one of the first times they saw a program where they experienced the impact in the cell. So most programs will be focused on how would you do better or be better when you leave. Most of them are focused on how do you be better where you are. And there were many different people who were in charge of just that rehabilitation component of the prison, who will be encouraging, who will be trying to find programs and invite persons to open doors to provide interventions for rehabilitation. We were on a good path, and I think COVID is what put a real hard stop, because obviously even in the aftermath and as outside began to open up a bit more, the prison was still a very sensitive area. So I still think, even though we're still engaged, still in conversation with the prison about implementing our programs which are built on rehabilitation and trying to help plug this hole that you have described. But that type of rehabilitation is a whole of society effort. Like one prison program can't solve that, because the prison program can add one component, but when they come out, another component has to be added. And if it is that, it's like doing juvenile, when you got juvenile delinquent interventions that don't include parents. So you sit as a counselor, you counsel a boy for an hour, but you got 1 hour a week, and for the rest of the week, you got to send him back in the environment with the parents who are a contributor to the issue. So it's not that your interventions or your skills aren't good or what you're doing doesn't work, but your 1 hour a week will never overpower all the other hours of the environment that he's in. And I think rehabilitation for prisoners, rehabilitation for addicts is a whole of society intervention. And if it is as a society that we don't think comprehensively about how we want to address these issues, then we're going to keep seeing these cycles and these loops, because there's James Clear has this quote where he says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior, and there are few things more powerful than the environment and the people that you hang around, the community that you return back to. And if you don't have a strategic solution, not just for how can we serve prisoners in the prison, but what happens when they come out, how does, whether it be the NGOs or the government, partner to provide other interventions or solutions to help them transition effectively back into society, being fully aware of the stigmas associated with being a prisoner or being a gang member, etc., then it will always feel like a losing battle. So I do think that, yes, we haven't been the best at rehabilitation in the prison, but I do see persons who are making a significant effort to at least have intervention in the prison, but the need is much bigger than in the prison. Yeah.
It's not even just a Barbados thing, because I feel like on a whole, as you just said, stigma stems across so many different platforms of things. As soon as people see weakness, flaws, anything that's not the norm, all of a sudden you're not good enough to be a part of society, essentially, and they just want to tear you down.
Yeah.
So whether that's mental health, and addiction falls under mental health, guys. It's a disease. They're not realizing that people are people. Like, even criminals are people. They've been convicted of something. They've done their time. Yes, not every single person wants to be good. Not every single person wants to, be good for society. But there are people who do go in and they do realize, I've made a mistake. And they try to come back out, and then all they're hearing is, you're not good. You can end back up in the same place. You're deadbeat this. You're like, there's so much labels put on people. And when you look at society and how they even place labels on people who aren't criminals, who are just regularly struggling, sick people, like physical illness, mental illness, and you're just like, if you put so many different labels on people, how do you expect them to want to contribute, to want to be a part of life? And that's why I had asked about resentments, because people put you in a box and they expect you to fulfill this box idea. And then when you don't, they cast you aside. And it's so hurtful to watch all of this happen. It's hurtful to see people who are 12, like children, 13, 14, just go down these paths because they don't have the guidance. And then when you are trying to guide them, as you just said, they still have to go back to parents who are either not there, or parents who just tell them that they're no good. Continue to like pump it in their head that all they can do is crime. And then after they're in that place, then it would be like, I always knew that you would end up like that. No, you're the one that pushed me in this direction. As you said, no options. You're telling me the only option I have is to be a criminal. And then when I become a criminal, how does that make sense? And as you said, also, it's a societal rehabilitation necessary that everyone has to play their part. It's a community to raise children, to be there to mold and shape. So it's very interesting, like watching, listening, seeing people who are trying and are struggling, because even though you're trying with your program, as you said, one program can't fix everything.
That's correct.
Is there anything else that you think could be done in society on a whole when it comes to mental illness, physical illness? Like, what's one thing that you would try to share with people?
I think there are a lot of things that should be done. Even with a chronic illness, there is sometimes the mental struggle is more severe than the physical pain. And then there's the stigmas associated as well, so if it goes from some doctors have experienced thinking that I just want drugs because I'm a drug addict. It stems from if it's one thing you can't tell me, it's how much pain I in. You can't tell me that, right? It's like I learned I can't tell my wife how to feel. Like, I can't tell you how to feel. You can't tell me how much pain I am in, right? And I don't know if you know how sickle cell people usually look, but I actually don't look like I have sickle cell. So a doctor actually told me, "Man, you're too fat. I've got sickle cell." I was like, "Fam, like, what that even mean, brother? like what that mean? Like what?
Yeah, fuck you.
Like, fam, what you talking about? And all of these are parts of the journey, that you have to endure. And I think, at the heart of it is really empathy. Is really, are we building a society? Do we have people in positions of influence who lead with empathy, who lead with a desire to understand and to explore find the resources, explore the strategies that are necessary to ensure that we are serving people from a place of understanding, right? Because whether or not I am if I have sickle cell, I am in pain, and let's say I do have a drug addiction, both of those things can exist at the same time. I could be in severe pain and have a drug addiction. And because this may be the thing that is frowned upon, don't ignore the fact that I'm in severe pain, right? And how do we lead with the type of empathy that is built around serving people to the best of our ability? And I think once empathy becomes like a core value of our society, whether it be in the mental health arena, whether it be in the medical arena, whether it be in the different institutions that we have, that these people, whether mental or physical illness, exists in, and there's empathy. If we lead with that, I think we know we're building a society that desires to serve and to help them. It moves from the medical interventions and the mental health and counseling conversations all the way to how we design the streets and design, because empathy is a driving force, and I think that's the heart of it. And unfortunately, sometimes, just as how society evolves, we become so self-centered and so selfish in our desires and motives that we forget to care about people who are vulnerable and have significant and severe needs. And if the majority of these persons would hardly have the resources to be able to engage in the private help or get on a plane and go somewhere else to get the solutions that they need. So I think as a people, we need the value of empathy to be core to all of our conversations and interventions. And if it's one thing I would say to both the medical and the mental health spaces, is to ensure that empathy is also always at the heart of what we do. Yeah.
I genuinely think that we need more classes on it, like from a young age, like implementing that into schools. But I feel like people don't want to implement it into schools because they think that mental health is wishy-washy type of things. As soon as you bring up mental health, or you bring up health that is not stereotypical of you cut yourself, so now you're in pain, then it's like whoa, that's too much for the children. You shouldn't be filling their heads with all of this stuff. When it's like you're actually just teaching them how to emotionally regulate, what their emotions mean, how to interact with each other so that they don't have to get violent, because they don't know how to handle the anger because they're going through so much hormones in their body. And if at home mommy is hitting daddy or daddy is hitting mommy, of course that's how I can come to school and start to hit people too, because that's how I know to deal with what I'm upset about. I can segue into Andre and his superhero questions. Oh wait, you sent me some.
The audience has questions.
Oh, the audience has questions? My bad. Look at okay. Not him literally having like 10 questions, guys.
The audience. The people.
I love it.
I just want to say these are not my questions.
These are the people's questions. The people wants to...
Don't talk me. People
Is it true your prison program is a front for you to gain knowledge to fight crime in Venezuela?
Well, I've never been to Venezuela, so that would not be true. No.
Is what a superhero would say.
Never been.
If you were a superhero, who would you be?
I'd be Dario.
Suspicious.
Muy excelente.
Why would you use your own name to be a superhero? Then you would not have a, what do you call it?
Yeah, I would use my own name because
a pseudonym?
It would change the perspective of what a superhero really is. A superhero people, it's not the the Supermans and the Batmans. The real superheroes, I think, are are people who build resilience to overcome challenges that should send their life or their quality of life down a particular path, and they have been committed to overcoming it to lead and live a different type of life. And if that's the story that Dario tells, then all of a sudden, other people will say, "Oh,
I could
it's
be
a
a
superhero
superhero
too." You know, so we
Uh-huh.
normalize being superheroes as opposed to having friends in the prison to rescue us.
I want you to know that was a beautiful answer, right? But you're feeding into Andre's delusions.
Tell me more, man. These Andre Delusion 101.
What superpower would you most want?
That's a very good question. The superpower that I would most want.
Not the one that you have. The one
Yeah,
that you will want.
I taking about one that I don't already possess, you know? That I would most want.
When I was younger, I always wanted invisibility. But then I realized that was just coming from trauma.
That is a trauma, that PTSD. That's yeah. I think for where I'm at right now, the superpower I will most want is the ability to see into the future. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think that would stress you out? My anxiety is like, I don't want to know. That's too much pressure.
Yeah, my like, because I am not a I am very I'm a very stable individual. So I am the type that prefers give me certain bad news, not keep me waiting for uncertain news. Right? So it's like like the other day I started experiencing sickle cell complications from, just I had a very traumatic experience last June. And I found out that the because of what happened in June, I now have permanent scarring on my lungs, and my heart is a bit enlarged. Right, so some of it is irreversible, some of it can be managed. So the doctor tells me, look, you need to go and do these tests to find out exactly the severity of these issues. Right. Now she told me do the test today. I do the test tomorrow. But I gotta wait 2 weeks to get the results. Like, come on. Like, my brain gonna think between now. I gonna be thinking, I gonna be making the worst calculations, like I'm about to die, what gonna happen to my wife and my 3 children, etc. etc. I would prefer you to give me the bad news like day 3. Like, let me see you day 3. Give me bad news. And let me adjust to this news, now to keep me in the limbo of 2 weeks to where it was, and even in some spaces of psychology, they actually argue that uncertainty is
way worse.
It has a significantly detrimental impact on the human well-being, because we are oftentimes bent toward thinking the worst.
We have good
So
imaginations.
if I had a superpower, like let me see the future. I want to know how much time I have. I want to know like when it is that I'm going to die. I want to know, whether or not these decisions can lead down the path that I think, so that I am acting at every moment with a level of certainty. That may rob, just the qualities of living a human life. The ups and downs of life. I can imagine being always prepared for what coming next. So take the beauty out of living. But having lived with sickle cell for as long as I have, like, I need to live with that. Let me see. So I think that would be the one superpower that I wish I had sometimes.
Okay, back to an unserious question. Have you ever met Bane?
No, but Bane is actually one of my favorite villains. No,
Does
like,
that
Bane,
tell you that he's Batman?
yeah, like Bane is like, Bane is a philosopher, right? So anybody who watch, I can't remember which Batman it is. I just remember Bane. There are 2 instances or 2 monologues or 2 conversations being had that shaped my life. The first one was when at Emerge we talked about this, when when Batman thought he could compete with Bane, you know, and Bane is beating Batman, and Batman turned off all the lights. And Bane was like, if I take darkness as your ally, like this is my playing field. This is where I have been molded and forged. And it's like this amazing sense of self-awareness. Like, you know, come on my playing field, like Batman, like bats is in darkness, you know, like bats go together with the dark. But fam, that Batman suit, that's a suit. You pretending. I actually live in this space, right? And that conversation has stuck with me because one of my greatest strengths is an acute awareness of my weaknesses, and it's the ability to either play in or create a playing field that I will always win in. So I don't compete with people. I don't compete. And I don't encourage people to compete with me because we're never playing the same game. I want to play the game that I was molded to play. And I just got some games that you will not be able to beat me on, right? And I will not be able to beat you on. And then the second instance is when Batman was in the pit when you know, he breaks Batman's back and he carry Batman down into the pit. And Batman laying down, back broken, and he asks Bane, so what are you going to do with Gotham? And Bane said, I can poison them with hope. I can kill them with hope. And I don't realize how people don't realize that there are a few things more... I think that false hope is more dangerous than hopelessness. Like when you put your hope in something that will always disappoint you. Like Bane is that I can go there, I can build their hope, and I can crash it. And I think like so many of us live in this perpetual state of placing our hope in something that promised something that it just can't satisfy. Like they can promise you, oh, you can get this, you know. This way, lending institutions will always be around. Oh, come let go, promise you can have, you know. This is why people will always either engage in illegal or activities that are not beneficial to them because look, they can dangle the carrot in front of you, and once you get close enough, miss it. Put the carrot a little further, and this is how you can treat with Gotham. And to me, it's such a powerful tool of a reflection of how the current world is being manipulated. They're going to dangle this hope in front of you that the world can never satisfy. And you're just in this perpetual state of hoping and longing for something, and it never happens. It never works out. And once I could do that to you often enough, then you stop dreaming. You stop hoping. You stop trying. You just settle for whatever happens, because I believed before. I tried before. And then you end up with an entire society that just going through the motions. You know, people talk about voter apathy. It's like, we've been here before. You know, just going through the motions. So I actually love Bane. Never met him, but inspirational.
Who would win in a fight, you or Bane?
It depends on the type of fight.
Oh.
Physical fight, Bane for sure. But based on my self-awareness, the fight will never get there. Yeah, we will never get to a fist fight. Yeah. I was caught the fight long before. Through conversation. Communication. I can win the battle of the words. And then we will never get to the fight.
I love that. How did you defuse the dirty bomb? Did you help? Did you get help, or was it solo? We have to mute the word.
Yes, you should. I have no idea what bomb you're talking about. But I have diffused potential bombs before, which were just shaped as interpersonal conflicts.
Metaphorical.
Yeah, you get me? So I say all the time, by nature, I'm not a peacemaker. I'm a peacekeeper. Right? There are people who walk into conflicts and they can make peace. By
I love that you're taking these unserious questions and just giving me gold. Thanks.
Yeah. While there are other people who are like me, that my personality is inclined not to make the peace, but to keep the peace. If you want peace, we got it. If you want war, I have war to give. But I have friends who are peacemakers. And the Lord has been working on my heart to get me to the point where, like in the midst of conflict, I now diffuse bombs. I'm like, all right, it's not worth it. But it wasn't always that way. I was always bent toward keeping it. Because, I never liked the idea of people like hitting, like want to chop me. That's why kind of be a gangster too. It's like, you want bust my head for heat? What? Like, I could never do it, But I have diffused some potential bombs.
I ain't no killer, but don't touch me.
Just
don't touch me. We would have peace until there is war. Then,
so that's how I have been. But the Lord has worked on my heart, and I'm moving in now to the peacemaker, diffusing the conflict before it explodes.
Is the Mandela effect because you and your friends time traveled?
The people want to know.
First and first, you need to explain what is the Mandela effect for me.
Jesus.
Was it?
Alright. Let me tell you fast. There's got certain things from back in the day that you remember, but no change. Good example is Bernstein beers and Bernstein beers. Or hopefully the Loom had a cornucopia on it and no it doesn't.
And then people will tell you that never existed. Like the creators would say it was always Berenstain Bears instead of Berenstein. But like a good chunk of millennials are like, no, I remember it being Berenstein.
Monopoly Man with a monocle or without the monocle, or Pikachu with the black top tail or without it, or
that we doing. Yeah, if it was me, that I would miss that detail completely. So that one is not me.
Why have we never seen you and Black Panther in the same room? The people demand answers.
Well, I think Black Panther died. So. So.
He died.
No. We're not talking about
Chadwick Boseman.
We're talking about Black Panther.
The Black Panther.
Yeah.
The Black Panther is deceased.
Yeah.
Moving on. Was the series Supercell based on your real life journey? There were so many people in Supercell.
Yeah. But I should say, right? In June last year, when I had the crisis, it was the first time in my sickle cell journey that I almost died. I remember when they decided this intervention they would do was called a red blood cell exchange, where they will literally take all of my blood through one hand and replace it. Should replace some blood, and I don't know where they get blood from. Through the next hand. And my wife asked the nurse, "Is this safe?" And the nurse said, "Well, if we don't do it, he will surely die.
Yeah.
If we do it, he might live."
You see?
So if I were you,
you
would do it, right? And that was the life-saving intervention. After that, I began to recover. It wasn't good, but it started the journey of recovery. And I remember obviously I had to go into a time of come out the hospital and go into the recovery space. When I had enough energy to watch a movie, the first thing that I watched was Supercell. And I had no idea it was about sickle cell. Like, it just, how Netflix does advertising new Netflix series. Like, man, let me see what this thing, I think the actor has seen him in the previous movie and they clicked it. And this is where I learned about Supercell. Where the actual trend of these questions are flawed. Because the real superhero would not be me, but my children. So I would be like
Remember, these are not my questions.
I will be the creator of these
so you're gonna have
superheroes.
So you're
right?
3 daughters.
I have 2 sons and 1 daughter.
2 sons and 1 daughter.
Yeah.
Are superheroes.
For sure. At least for me. Yeah. So yeah, and I think it's important because especially in our part of the world, sickle cell awareness is is like there are some countries, like in some African countries, that sickle cell is a conversation in dating because they have experienced this severe impact of the disease. Sickle cell is a demon, fam. I wouldn't wish sickle cell on my worst enemy because of the unpredictability of it. Because it's a blood disease, you can't determine what it would or would not touch, and you can predict who can potentially have sickle cell because it's gene based. Like you can only inherit it from parents, right? The father must have a trait or the disease, the mother must have the trait and the disease, and that is what contributes to their children potentially having sickle cell. And the lack of awareness that exists in our part of the world is to the point that I have friends, like and obviously my dear friends, like who I love dearly. Like they only found out their daughter had sickle cell after she got sick. Like she's lived a couple of years and now she's sick. And they may have been aware of, the traits, etc. But because of a lack of awareness around the significance and the impact of the disease, I don't think it is taken as important in our part of the world as we should. And I think the awareness of it needs to increase. I think there are some medical interventions that could help, especially on the pain management end. When it comes to managing pain, like there's research that shows the closest comparison to a severe sickle cell crisis is cancer pain. Like there's the closest comparison of the pain levels. Yet in our part of the world, the type of medicines that, well, and I just come from my experience. So like when I compare the strength of medicine I was able to get in Miami when I got sick and where they stopped here in Barbados, like I feel like I just have to go through a painful crisis much longer because of the quality of medicines that we have. And obviously the concern would be, get more powerful medicines, could lead to more addiction, etc. But that's where regulation has come in, like being able to keep somebody out of pain, in my opinion, is sufficient to do the work to regulate it well, as opposed to don't do it to avoid, the negative impact. So I think one of the things that Supercell did, it sparked this conversation about the awareness of sickle cell disease. So it was not about my life, but it has served my life well.
Okay, there's two more serious questions, but I have a curiosity question. Did they tell you how long it would take after the transfusion until it was all your blood again?
I have noted it not. Like I have no idea whose blood is running through my veins.
I feel like at some point it would go back to.
I might be a superhero. No idea. I have no idea.
What was your favorite James Clear quote?
I just told you one. The one about environment. Environment is invisible hand that shapes human behavior. And the second one, probably the one that resonates most to me because of when I track my life and how and what I saw as values to me. He has this quote that says, most people lack motivation, but what they really lack is clarity. And there's so many people that I come across in the work that I do outside of the prison. I also have a organizational development, personal development company called Inspire Leadership Solutions. And we create a lot of interventions for persons who our heart is to help people to fulfill purpose and maximize their potential. So we have a lot of conversations in the area of people seeking to discover purpose, to ensure that they are committed to things that are giving them meaning, etc. And one of the recurring conversations that happen in that space is the lack of motivation to do the things or to do things that they want to do. And when you dig deeper, as James Clear says, you realize that motivation actually isn't the issue. They just don't know what they want to do or what they should do. And is oftentimes a problem or issue of clarity. Are you clear on, if not your life's purpose, Are you clear on your next step? Because if you have clarity, then it breeds conviction. You know, the more I become clear about my life, my journey, my direction, the more convicted I become, the more my beliefs are cemented in this is the direction I want to take. And once you have clarity and conviction, all you really need next is courage. Because the flip side of the quote is that most people think they lack clarity or they want clarity, but what they really need is courage. Because eventually, most of us know what we need to do, we just don't want to do it. Most of us know the things we need to stop doing. Most of us know that the reason why we are not making a significant impact in the areas that we're passionate about is because we're doing too many things. Most of us know that there are some environments, there are some people that we are engaged and have in our environment that we have either outgrown or should have shifted. But because of the years we have spent, the investment we have made, we have this emotional connection to it, and it's actually hindering our progress. And oftentimes, the process from clarity to conviction should lead to just courageous action. Make the decisions that best position you to fulfill the purpose that you have clarity on. And if you could do those three things, it could only lead into catalytic impact. You have the type of impact that snowballs into an effective and an impactful life. So that clarity quote from James Clear is probably my favorite one in the book because I think that is the catalyst for real change, transformation, and impact.
Okay. Your last question is, have you read Atomic Habits?
Yes.
Is there a follow-up question to that? Audience member that asked that question?
No, because he already did, so I should have asked that first.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I did. Yes, I read.
There's more audience than Andre and Derek this time. Just for context for you guys.
So Atomic Habits versus the Atomic
Oh
Bomb.
my god.
Which one, if you had to choose overall to save a society, which one you will use?
Well, I would prefer the Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not sure atomic bombs could do much saving.
There is no saving in atomic bombs.
Well, the threat of an atomic weapon is a very good deterrent. I just saying.
Hurry.
But yes, I did read Atomic Habits. I think is one of those books that I use. So I categorize books in my mind, and there are a few books that I use as reference books that I consistently refer to. So I keep them in my library, and that's one of those books. Yeah, and I think as you read books like Atomic Habits, it could breed, like if you don't actually begin to follow through on the things that you want to do, it breeds frustration. Because, you know, it's like, you know what you need to do again, but you don't do it. So yeah, but I loved it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So thanks so much for redoing your episode. Hopefully all goes well this time. Cross your fingers, guys. Hopefully y'all are seeing this. It was great having this conversation. Great having you here. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.